Warning, I swear a lot.
It is 11:45 in the AM and you're watching The Foreman. I'm your host, Foreman, and today I wanted to talk about something, a question from the last Foreman Talks that someone asked me. And it is a very simple, in essence, question that is nevertheless quite difficult for me to answer for various reasons. And the question is, what is your most hated video game? Now, look, I wouldn't sit here and say I've played more than most people. A lot of people try out many different games, but I have played quite a few. And there are multiple that could fill such a criteria. I fucking hated I Want to Be the Guy, or I Want to Be the Guy Gaiden, for instance. I think that game sucks ass. And there are other things that have pissed me off over the years, but I have to say, thinking about it objectively, I do believe there is one game that I hate more than anything else. And it's not necessarily because the game is the worst game I've ever played, or because it's super, super bad. It's pretty fucking bad, actually, but it's not because it's the worst thing I've ever played or anything like that. It comes down to a variety of factors, which I will get into in just a minute. But my least favorite game, my most hated game of all time, I think, and I don't know, maybe this will change over time, but thinking about it, this is the one. My most hated game is Too Human. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of Too Human, because it fizzled out pretty fucking quickly after it came out, and a lot of legal shit happened as well. But Too Human was released, I don't fucking know when, maybe I should do some research. Too Human was released in 2008, August 2008, developed by Silicon Knights, and it is one of the most... I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. Now, there are reasons why I hate this video game, but for those of you who don't know, maybe I should at least explain what the fucking game is. It's this third-person action RPG, right? Sort of done Diablo style. It's kind of like a top-down perspective, but it's not like Diablo. The game itself plays more like Devil May Cry, I'd say, but to compare it to Devil May Cry feels blasphemous because it does not play as well as Devil May Cry, not even close. But it's a third-person action RPG based on a sort of futuristic, technological Norse mythology kind of situation. You play as Baldur, as in B-A-L-D-U-R, which is interesting because the Norse god Baldur was, in Norse mythology, kind of a huge wuss. So I don't know why he's the monster-slaying protagonist of this game, but here he is. The idea is that Baldur, who has less cybernetics than the other quote-unquote gods, because they're not actually gods, he has less cybernetics, and as a result, that means he is, wait for it, too human. Yeah? Yeah, you get clever, isn't it? It's really God, wow. You can tell that this game is an absolute masterclass in writing and subtlety. It's not a good fucking scene, ladies and gentlemen. The game was in development hell for about 10 years. It was originally announced in 1999. I'm literally reading some of this from Wikipedia because I don't remember a lot of this shit. It was abandoned for a long time. Started again in 2005. Microsoft bought the rights. It only came out on the 360. And upon release, everyone was like, hey, this game sucks ass. This game is fucking awful. This game actually blows. And it was later involved in a big lawsuit between them and Unreal Engine creators Epic Games because the developers of Too Human were like, your engine, you didn't tell us how to use it properly and that's why it's shit. But it turns out that Silicon Knights actually did something with that engine they weren't supposed to do, so Epic Games sued them back and won, and that completely tanked Silicon Knights, and off they fucking went. They filed for bankruptcy in 2014. Now, Too Human was advertised, and indeed I have the game in case around here somewhere. The game is advertised as the beginning of an epic trilogy. A full trilogy. They went into this with Mass Effect dreams, right? And sure enough, the ending of this game is a cliffhanger. I don't actually know what the ending is, I never got there, but everyone says it's a cliffhanger and I fucking believe them. But we've established what the game is, and we've addressed the key controversial point about it in very loose terms. If you want to know more, a guy called Matt McMuscles who used to be part of Two Best Friends Play or Super Best Friends Play, whatever the fuck you want to call it. He does videos on games that go through like development hell and whatnot and have big problems. There's a series called What Happened, or What Happened, one of the two. He did one on this game. If you're interested to find out more about Two Human, I highly suggest you check that video out, as it will tell you everything you need to know in terms of facts, right? He will give you the information you require. He's also pretty funny. But I'm not really here to get into the facts behind it. I wanted to give you a brief summary. What we're talking about is why I fucking hate it. And that is all a factor, in fact. But we'll get around to it. I think what I hate about Two Human comes down to several factors, right? Crap story, crap characters, bad design, and wasted potential. These are the things that I hate about this video game. Let's start with the story, and I don't even think it matters if I go into spoilers or not, and I don't think I remember enough to really spoil it for you, so it probably doesn't matter, but like I said, the story, as loosely as it is, because it has literally been maybe a decade since I played this. Futuristic Norse times, right? It's a futuristic society with a bunch of superhumans who are referred to as gods, and they're basically the Norse gods. You got Balder, you got Thor, you got Freya, you got a whole bunch, right? Loki is the villain, because of course he is. And they fight robots. Loki has an army of robots, and you fight them. And their human armies are like, oh man, we're so horribly outpowered, but the gods will save us. And the gods, right, bearing in mind they are based on Norse mythology, which perhaps next to Greek mythology is one of the most interesting mythologies in human history. The quote-unquote gods in this game are some of the driest, most boring, lifeless, unlikable, pathetic motherfuckers I have ever seen in my life. And you can't even look at it as oh, they're portraying them as intentionally flawed to show that even the gods aren't perfect. No, they just suck. You can have flawed characters be likable. They aren't even likable. And there is one excellent moment, and it's excellent because it's awful, that summarizes my issue with this perfectly. After you do the first mission, the game launches and you literally go into the first mission. And that's cool, it's a hit the ground running kind of thing, right? Just go in, play the video game, we'll explain a bit more as things go on. Fair enough, let the player just experience it. But you go through that and you play through that first mission and you're like, wow, this is a bit rough, but I think I'll get used to it, and there's a lot of promise here, so it's fine. You go back to Asgard. I think it's Asgard. I think the city's called Asgard. I don't fucking remember. Did they actually go that far with it? I don't know. Wow, I casually just glanced into Wikipedia to see like the story and stuff, just to see if it is actually Asgard. Oh no, it's Midgard. Terribly sorry, it's called Midgard. I just scrolled down through Wikipedia just to remind myself some facts, and I wanted to give myself a brief summary of the story, but Wikipedia doesn't have a fucking entry on the story. Because they were like, fuck it, who cares? Oh, that's fun. But yeah, back to my point. You beat the first mission, you fight, Grendel. Yeah, you fight a giant robot called Grendel. Obviously, they're going with that reference to Norse mythology. And you go back to Midgard, and you meet the rest of the gods, and you're like, oh man, like, I'm just a teeny tiny god, and these guys are the big dudes, right? These are the guys you want to be. And they suck. And you talk to Thor, who is like, I guess this was before Avengers. This is before the Avengers and Marvel really kicked off. So people weren't as crazy about Thor as they are now. But still, people knew who Thor was. Anyone who plays video games was somewhat aware of Norse mythology, knew what Thor was, and that Thor was a big deal. It's like the only Norse god that everyone collectively knew. And he's an idiot. Well, first of all, they went for the traditional, like, I'm a big, strong, cool guy who's stronger than everyone personality archetype, which isn't terrible, but it's not interesting either. But Thor has a crush on one of the gods, female god. I can't remember. It might be Freya. I don't fucking remember. But she says something. She makes some kind of quote unquote snarky comeback to something he says and walks off. And he says, and I quote, and he says this out loud, "Gods, I love her. As a sister, I mean," with that exact timing and almost that exact inflection. There's no subtlety there. They didn't try. All they did was just be like, love interest, Thor is interested in Freya, and they didn't have any subtlety to it. No, like, oh, well, maybe, you know, he's a big, strong guy all the time, but when she's talking, he kind of eases off a little bit and, like, try and have some chemistry going or something like that. Even if it was, like, unrequited, they could still have chemistry. Or establish a situation where he thinks he's a big man, but she's not interested in him, so he's a petulant man-child, and then have that be a conflict where eventually Boulder would fight him or something. You could set up multiple character interactions through the use of a romance. This is done in many video games and many narrative settings. But they went with, man, I love her, but as a sister, I mean. And it's just so flat. It's so fucking flat. And I'm like, a human wrote this. What the fuck? It's weird that this particular one scene, this particular one moment in a scene, I'm obsessing over so hard. But it is so fucking bad. It is so clumsy. And it is so emblematic of the rest of the dialogue and characters in this game. Boulder is boring. Freya is boring. Loki is boring. Thor is boring. Hel is boring. She's boring too. The game establishes early on that you have some kind of mythical wolf machine AI spirit in your weapon, and then it does fuck all with that for the rest of the game. The story is bad, and I can't remember it, and I don't care either. So we'll move on from story now, because I think I've made my fucking point, and move on to gameplay. I guess this is a review in some sense, but really it's just me talking about how much I hate it. There's no like, getting it twisted. Gameplay design is ass. I mentioned Diablo and Devil May Cry as being kind of what it's like, but you know, you have a variety of different weapons. You have a lot of different weapons to choose from, actually. Different melee weapons, different guns. Cool ideas here, very cool. And in fact, in terms of the customization, you can later choose whether you want to lean into human specialization or cybernetic specialization, which opens up whole new skill trees. It's an in-depth system, and there's a lot of loot involved. That's where the Diablo aspects come from. A lot of different items you can get with loads of different special abilities. Now, I reckon if I played it now, I'd probably be better at it, and I could probably make something that breaks the game fairly quickly. Not because I'm so amazing at video games or anything like that, but just because, you know, as you get older, you look at something, you'd be like, oh, okay, I see how I could fucking manipulate this. But there is a key problem with this video game that I remember. I don't even need to look it up, I remember this specifically. And that is how you attack. Now, when you play an action RPG, right, a third-person action RPG, and you have your standard twin-stick controller, right, which has become the template for all controllers in the modern age. Even when this came out, I believe the Wii was out at that time as well, but the Wii had the nunchuck, and that's not a twin stick, but it is a right-handed stick, I suppose. The Wii had a lot of problems. Great console, but it had a lot of problems. But your standard PlayStation or Xbox controller had the twin sticks. And this is a system that has carried on more than 10 years later, because guess what? It fucking works. And Nintendo does it now as well, so it definitely works. You have your twin sticks, and your left sticks typically move. I'm pleased to inform you that they did get that right, and left stick does in fact move you, which is good. What do you think right stick does? I'll give you a second to guess. If you guessed control the camera, ladies and gentlemen, you are a very logical person who understands basic game design. However, you are incorrect. It does not control the camera. Right stick is your attack function. You attack with the right stick. Now you may be thinking, well, gee, Foreman, that sounds like you'd have a lot of camera issues, and it also sounds like precision with your attacks to perform certain combos, specifically trying to perform combos that require maybe different inputs, would be quite difficult with a stick. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, that's a very logical thing, but the difference is this time you are correct. Yes, it is a hassle, and it feels bad to play, and combat really does come down to just fucking flinging the right stick all over the place. 90% of the time, when you're playing 2 human, all you're gonna hear is this. Because that's all you're gonna be doing. It's not good. Now, if it had lent more towards Diablo, it could have gotten away with it, because Diablo had that sort of bird's eye perspective, as it were, and the camera was kind of fixed, and walls were transparent and stuff like that. You know, it was much more vertical camera angle, so you didn't really need it. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I played Diablo. I can't remember if the right stick in that game does camera. I don't think it does. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but it didn't need to. Devil May Cry, I mean, Devil May Cry 1 had tank controls and sort of fixed camera angles, so that was fine. But for a game like 2 Human, really, that camera control is entirely necessary, and it's not there. It is not there. You can't do it. Not the worst crime the game has committed, right? It doesn't make the game unplayable. I got pretty far in the game of my own volition. No one even held a gun to my head. I just played it. But it's not good. It doesn't feel good. And you play through that first mission thinking, well, it's a bit clunky, but I think I'll get used to it. Not really. It's not that you get used to it or get good with it as much as you just sort of internally sigh and accept it. You're like, well, this is the way it is. If I want to keep playing, this is what I'm going to have to deal with. And indeed, you may think to yourself, well, if it's that shit, why'd you keep playing? And the answer is because I was 14? Fuck. I was 14 when this came out. And I didn't have any money. I don't have much money now, but I do have access to a lot more games. I didn't have any money, couldn't really buy my own games, and I got this game. Did I get this game, or did Pip lend it to me? I don't fucking... No, I got this game, because we both had the game. Yeah. Either way, I didn't have a lot of money, so you kind of played what you had. You weren't sat there like, man, this game sucks, I'm just gonna go get another 5, or download something, or whatever. I don't know how to pirate for a 360, so I was kind of out of luck. My PC at the time, I think, ran Windows XP, so it was not doing well. I played it because I didn't have much choice. And even then, I didn't finish it. So, bad stuff. And I want to add as well, because I mentioned combat with the right stick not being good, but I would like to... It can be done well, just not here. And a good example of a game that uses the right stick very well would in fact be Fight Night, round 3 and round 4, in which you utilize the right stick in specific motions to throw different kinds of punches. You curve it for a hook or an uppercut. You tap it for a jab. You throw it for a straight. And it's not too strict about what these things mean, which means those combos flow quite well. And you can indeed combo the fuck out of someone in Fight Night round 4 if you get a good pace going. But in this game, I remember just twaggling the fucking stick and Boulder would just swing in some fashion. Trying to fight with any kind of finesse or intent is virtually impossible. You'd be better off using guns half the time, but that brings me to the next part of game design in this game that sucks ass. And this is kind of specific, but the reason I bring it up is because it starts being a thing in the second mission and continues to be for, as far as I can tell, the rest of the game. You swap between guns and melee. I've said this, and it's a simple concept. Starting from the second mission, you start to encounter enemies who are invulnerable to guns. Now, this makes sense, because otherwise the game would basically be a twin-stick shooter if you could murder everything with guns, and it is trying to be something of a action RPG, you know, so I get it. Annoying, but fine. However, the game does something else as well around this time. And it introduces enemies that, if I remember correctly, when they die, they explode and inflict poison. Not ideal, but not unheard of in a video game, and not always the worst thing in the world. However, this poison will kill you. This poison will kill you. It does. That poison goes on for an ungodly amount of time, and it will kill you. And I think there are ways to restore your health, but I can't fucking remember what they are. So, that's a problem. Then... you'd look at this, right? Oh man, there are enemies who explode and hit me with poison that would kill me. I should gun them down from range, right? I don't want to get into melee with those guys. And that is a very logical response, ladies and gentlemen, but the fact that I'm presenting it this way means you have probably guessed what the problem is. And that is that a lot of the time, your enemies will have that poison and be immune to ranged attacks. They get both. Oh, they get both. Which means you will get poisoned. Which means you will die. And this leads to the next aspect of horrible game design, one very frequently talked about by people who critiqued this game, and indeed I will never stop talking about it, and that's the respawn times. Oh, the respawn times. Oh, fucking respawn times. So, when Boulder dies, and he will, he slowly and dramatically drops to the floor, at which point the camera angle changes to a sort of low down looking up shot from his body nearby. You know, it's not like first person, but it's nearby. And a Valkyrie descends from the sky in light, all glowing and shit, and she descends, 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 she descends, and she descends, and then she arrives at Boulder's body, and then she very slowly, very carefully picks him up, both arms, holding him like a fucking baby. And then she ascends, 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 disappears into the sky. And then the game eventually loads again and you're back in the game. I don't know exactly how long that respawn timer is. In fact, I really want to see if I can find something that tells me exactly how long it is. Okay, I've done the research. It takes over 20 seconds for you to die and come back, which, it's not that bad. I guess there's no loading screen and that helps, but bearing in mind you will die multiple times within a very short period of time. We're talking, you know, if there are enough of these poison guys and like if you're in a particularly tough area, you might die 2 or 3 times in the span of like 2 minutes, and each time you have to fall over, and he lays on the ground for a while before that Valkyrie shows up, and then you go through the full 20-second cutscene of the Valkyrie picking you up and carrying you away, and it's not necessary, and it's fucking annoying. You know what? When I Google searched that, one of the first results I saw was stop complaining about the death animation, and I'm like, no, I will never stop complaining about that death animation. It's garbage. Do it once. You don't need to do it again. Because think about it, ladies and gentlemen, you're already pissed off because you've been killed. Bad start. You're also pissed off because you've been killed by an exploding poisonous enemy that can't be shot. So you're already feeling pretty cheated, but then you have to sit there and watch a Valkyrie drag you away, and it's just... It's one of those things, and this is the issue with 2 Human, of course, is that there is no one specific thing where I point to and go, that's why the game sucks. It's the fact that everything has problems. Everything has problems. Everything has things involved that make it not fun, not enjoyable, not engaging, annoying. The characters are inherently dislikable. I don't like any of them. Truly, I didn't like any of them. The only reason I had any kind of attachment to Boulder was because he was the character I was playing as. But I've played as so many better protagonists since then. It does nothing for me. Now, I've talked about, like, the music. I think the music was fine. I can't remember. It was unmemorable. Whatever. It was a fairly standard score from what I can remember. Maybe it was really good. I don't know, but I don't remember. So, I've talked about the aspects of gameplay, right? I've talked about the story. Now I want to talk about what upsets me the most, what pisses me off the most about 2 Human. And that is the wasted potential. Because, of course, this is what upsets me the most about most video games. That's what upsets me the most about Cyberpunk, for instance, was the wasted potential. But 2 Human, as I discussed at the start of this, as I mentioned, this game was, you know, it was in development for like 10 years. This was the developers, the creators, the director, whatever the fuck. This was a bunch of people's project. This was a big project. They had a lot of hopes and dreams weighing on this project. On top of that, this was going to be the start of a trilogy. Now consider, if you will, the idea that in the history of gaming releases, there could have been a AAA top-tier trilogy about sci-fi Norse mythology, right? Something that's not really been done since, probably due to how badly that tanked. That could have been fucking radical. That could have been something incredible. And when you actually play the game itself, and there are just a fuck ton of weapons to choose from, the aesthetics are really interesting. The human soldiers' armor they kind of have like wolf helmets, which is a really nice touch. I actually like the human soldiers more than I like the fucking gods. I think the soldiers are cooler. Kind of wish I was one of the soldiers, but whatever. There is so much potential. The idea of, well, do you stay more human because that makes you more of a symbol for the people, but then also you won't be as strong, or do you lean more towards cybernetics, which will give you the power to protect humanity, but you will indeed lose your humanity in the process? It's not an absurdly deep and complicated concept for character development and a story, but it is interesting and fun to explore. I love cybernetics in video games. I think they're fucking radical. I love Deus Ex. I've only played Human Revolution. I've heard the old ones are really good, but I've never got around to them. But I loved Human Revolution. I thought it was a great time. I love playing Cyberpunk and getting cybernetics. I love cybernetics in games, and exploring that concept is always great. There are a fuck ton of weapons in 2 Human, like I did just say, and a lot of opportunity for trying out different combat styles and have different move sets and like there's loads of different guns as well. You can have, I don't know if there's loads, but you can get like dual pistols, and you can get like a rifle, you get like heavy big cannons and stuff like that. There's a lot of potential in the game to be something truly impressive. It didn't even have to blow the doors off as a game. It could have just been a really enjoyable experience. The characters, there is so much you can do with Norse mythology in a futuristic setting. The characters could have been ridiculous. The characters could have been insane. But they were boring. They were really, 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 really boring. They fucked up the development, and then they got the fuck sued out of them. The company closed, and now you can't buy 2 Human on digital storefronts. It's gone. They took it away. That was part of the consequences of that lawsuit, is that every digital copy had to be wiped clean from all digital marketplaces. I managed to buy a physical copy of it secondhand, and I've got that for my Xbox. I haven't even tested that fucking thing. I don't even know if it works. I assume it does. I don't actually know. It might not, and I wouldn't lose much if it didn't. But it felt like a good idea to get my hands on a copy because it's kind of a piece of gaming history. It's a reminder of what can happen when someone really fucking sucks at game development, and it might be worth quite a bit of money down the line if there's no digital copies of it. You know, 10, 20 years from now, it might be completely vanished from the public consciousness, and I'll be like, hey, you remember this piece of crap? Still exists. I hate 2 Human, but the reason I hate it the most is because it should have been more than what it was. It's because with a fucking development company with a basic level of competence, and, you know, producers and shareholders are often a thing here, so maybe I should take that into consideration, but it could have been a really enjoyable game. It could have been a solid gem that the rest of us would all look back on and be like, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool game. Wasn't the best game I've ever played, but, you know, they did some interesting ideas. And it could have been a trilogy, and they could have taken that into the future. To be honest, it could have been the Mass Effect of its time, which was slightly before, I think, Mass Effect came out. Let me have a look real quick. Oh, wow, they have no excuse. Wow, Mass Effect came out a year before. Hang on. Hold up. Can we get an exact release date? November of 2007? Yeah, that came out earlier than 2 Human, and 2 Human was in development for 10 years, and Mass Effect is a janky game, but it functions, and 2 Human don't. There's not much excuse there. Actually, nah. Oh, it could have been going up alongside Mass Effect, right? From 2007 to 2008 onwards could have been this, like, era of sci-fi trilogies, and it could have been a situation in which Mass Effect and 2 Human were sort of squaring off against each other as opposing franchises. That could have been a whole thing. But no, that didn't happen. I don't think I have anything more to say about the subject, ladies and gentlemen, and the builders next door are starting to make a lot of noise, so I guess I should leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. What is your most hated game? I'm always curious to hear what people's most hated games are, because there is more schlock out there than just 2 Human. Naughty Bear springs to mind. I never played Naughty Bear, so I can't say that's my most hated game, because I never fucking played it. But if I played it, it would probably want to be one of my most hated games of all time, because it looks like utter garbage. I didn't like Manhunter, or Mania, or whatever. It was Mania, the shark one, but I don't think that game sucks. I think I just didn't get along with it. But I digress, I'm rambling. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, what is your least favorite game? What is the game you hate the most? Doesn't have to be the worst, the objectively worst game in the world. It just has to be the game you hate the most. I don't think 2 Human is objectively the worst game ever made. There are plenty of games that can take that title. But I do hate it. I hate it a lot, and I hate it because I'm sad about it. But I'm rambling. Thank you so much for watching. Don't know what I'll talk about next time, but I'll figure it out. If you got any suggestions, please leave them. I love to hear them. It helps me out big time. And whatever I talk about next time, hope I see you there. Toodles. Goodbye.